Thank you, everybody, for being here once again. This is the Game Development Livestream. We might almost rename it the AI in Gaming Development Livestream because we've been talking about artificial intelligence pretty much every week that this program has come up. But no, we actually have a separate one on AI technology, but this is about game development. And I thought it was time to bring in a couple of people who have focused on this problem and are actually building games and products and platforms around artificial intelligence in their games. So I'm super excited about this episode. We're going to dive deep and talk about the challenges of this, as well as the opportunity for game developers if you're thinking about artificial intelligence in your products. So I am John Radoff. I am one of the co-hosts of this program. I run a company called Beamable, where we build back-end infrastructure for games, AI games, Web3 games, Web2 games, MMOs, mobile games, everything that needs an online game component. And I'm here with Paul. Paul, go ahead. Quick intro from yourself.
Absolutely. My other co-host. Hey, I'm John's co-host on the game industry, whatever we're doing here, games industry, awesome stuff. I've been building games for a good quarter century. I work at King on Candy Crush on my day job, but I'm here on my own time, bringing a large-scale industry perspective to things.
Thanks, Paul. All right, now for our guest. Number one, Tyler, go ahead and introduce yourself from WanderHeart.
Yeah, great to meet y'all. I am former Wright games engineer, worked on League of Legends, Legends of Runeterra, was also at Wizards of the Coast on the Magic the Gathering Arena product. So if anyone loves Commander, we should grab a game. And I joined forces with my co-founder, Alan Burke, who was former head of analytics at Wizards of the Coast. We're really excited to bring digital Dungeons and Dragons through an AI game master to the masses for anyone who's ever wanted to play but doesn't have that game master or the patience to sit down and read 300 pages of rules. We're here for you.
Love it. Thanks, Tyler. And then Nuno, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. So good to be here. So I've been in the AAA games industry for many years now. I've started in Germany in Piranha Bytes. So for everyone that played Gothic, I worked on Reason 3 and Alex, focusing on the console versions, so PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and also all of the game engine parts of those games. I also worked at Lionhead, if everyone remembers Peter Molyneux, so I worked on Fable Legends. And I worked at Polystream, which was a startup, cloud gaming, but without using video. So it was a Silicon Valley startup, but in the UK, so raised 12 million Series A from Intel, eventually was acquired by Mythical Games. And I was also at Epic Games, so I was in the console team. So before Unreal Engine 5 was launched, I was supporting Fortnite, UE5, and also some of the internal projects like The Matrix Awakens and Lego. And I was also leading the optimization team for Unreal Engine 5. And now I'm building Nilo, which is a 3D generative AI native sandbox in the browser that is also social, so you can create any type of game that you would imagine.
Okay, this is awesome. So you hear from the pedigree of our guests today. This is the panel that you've been waiting for. If you wanted to really learn about the realities of building an AI-based game, we've got two people with an incredible background in AAA gaming and online gaming and traditional gaming. Now they're using AI tools to do it for reals in the commercial market. We're also joined here by Oscar. Oscar, thanks for producing us once again, controlling the camera, making sure that we stay on track, and listening to all the people in the audience. So I want to just remind everyone who's tuning in right now, there's a reason we do this as a live program, and it's so that you get to participate. So this is a really unique opportunity for you in the audience to share your comments. We'll bring it up on the screen. You can ask your questions. You've got a couple of guests here that are as good as it can possibly get in terms of experience in video games and then bringing it into artificial intelligence. Don't miss this opportunity to be part of the conversation. Of course, if you're watching this in replay, we love you too, but think about tuning in next time and coming in live and being part of the community that we're building here around these kind of developers. All right, I realize we should have done a coin toss or something to figure out who we're gonna drill first, but I'm just gonna say this, I'm gonna start with you, Tyler, actually, because I tried to do what you're now doing, like for real, at a hackathon a couple of years back. Me and my CTO went to this Andreessen Horowitz hackathon, virtual Horowitz hackathon. We won it, building something in a day and a half, which was like a dungeon master. And it was super cool. It was fun. It wouldn't have scaled. It wouldn't have like done a lot of things it needed to do. But I don't know how much you know about that project that we worked on, but I'm curious, like, there's a lot of, I think, quick wins that you can sit down with a OpenAI API and start creating like dungeon masterish experiences. For you, and going from that to creating a commercial product, like, what's the delta there? Like that 10% in game development, that's always the 99% of really building a game.
Yeah. No, this is a great question. I did the same thing. I sat down. It wasn't as quick a hackathon as you. I wanted to get a multiplayer platform stood up. So spent a couple months doing something that was like had phases and steps and various different game engine-y aspects that then AI was sort of the main game master for that. With very little work on the AI. It was just like, here's the platform to like connect people together in a chat room with some semblance of game engine structure to support it. And quickly found out that AI has a lot of limitations, as you may have seen, especially at the time ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo was interesting, novel, but it wasn't D&D. It wasn't fun. It didn't suck you into a story that felt real, that felt like there was real locations, real people that, you know, if I turned my head and turned back, it would still be there and it would still like have something interesting and compelling to dig into. We call it a yes and engine. You know, you say a thing and it's like, sure, that whatever you just said happens. Played a game similar to this and I was like, zombie apocalypse. Scratching behind the counter. I'm like, I'm gonna troll this thing, see what I can do. And I tell it that I pull out my bazooka out of my little survival satchel and blow away the counter. He's like, okay, you pull out your bazooka and blow away the counter. I'm like, okay. First off, I shouldn't have a bazooka. Second, like, then what? Was there something behind it? It didn't say.
There's no game.
I'm like,
there's no game. It's just a story.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even a good story. It was like, okay, you still hear some scratching. I'm like, but I just anyway. And so the end result was that I radioed in 50 helicopters that had army men with bazookas, and they blew away the convenience store I was in. And I flew away on the magic carpet and watched from above with popcorn. And I was just like, this is dumb. I don't want to play this. So that wasn't my experience. That was somebody else's online, but sorry, my product. So ultimately what we did is went back to the drawing board and said, how do we make this interesting? How do we make this fun? And there's a lot of things that came from that, 6-12 months of exploration. Some of it's in the prompt engineering. A lot of it is in how we approach the overall structure. And this is something I would share with anyone who wants to do games or hear about games, is that just because AI is now available doesn't mean everything else that we've ever done is suddenly irrelevant, right? Content, procedural generation, which is, for those who don't know, is like a way of like pulling together pieces of content in algorithmic ways. Good human authored content and art and things. And of course, gameplay. You still have to have something that's deterministic and fun. And AI LLMs, at least, are very squishy and not like there's a creative aspect to that, which is a superpower. But if you want to rely on it for like strong, deterministic, reliable systems of like, if I play this spell, this is the result. It's like, if I play the spell, I might have some crazy, like different result, and it's no longer fun or interesting because it's either too easy or too hard. Like,
it's not a game anymore. It's more like brainstorming. Yeah. Oscar, I think we have a clip of WanderHeart. Do we want to throw that on the screen just to give people a flavor for what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a little play test with my daughter and some friends.
And grab the keys.
You squeeze through the loop bar, your heart racing as you slip into the narrow space. The keys glint tantalizingly close. Roll the dice. You'll need an 8 or higher to succeed.
You got this.
No, I did! Your fingers brushing against the keys. With a quick, silent motion, you snatch them from the hook. The weight of freedom feels tangible in your palm.
So obviously, very different level of engagement in that one.
Mhm.
Or those kids, they're like, fingers crossed. It was really satisfying to see all the bets and how we're building this sort of start to take off. In fact, it almost felt overnight that suddenly, like, it was interesting. It had promise, but then suddenly everything started getting really good, and the engagement was there, and I started being surprised in my own. When you start to find engagement as a developer who plays it over and over and over, that's when you know that you've hit something, because you're the most critical.
And Tyler, when we talk about it being like a dungeon master, like almost literally, right? Like they're speaking back their answers. Is that kind of the format?
I do want to just call out, if you, Oscar, if you did want to share the YouTube clip, we have a full 5-minute clip that 20-second piece is from. Feel free to share that with the chat. But yeah, it's push to talk. You get into a room with friends. You're talking with each other and like, what are we going to do? Right now, the demo is an escape sequence from the jail of an airship. So you're in the sky, in jail, like worst possible scenario to be in. You have to figure out your way out. And it's a lot of fun. We see people do all sorts of crazy directions to escape to, there's a dragon turtle in the cargo hold that folks will get on and ride away into the sunset, or it will eat them, or they turn it on the guards and eat the guards. Anyway, there's a lot of fun things that we'll see from this.
Cool. So Nuno, let's talk about your platform. So it's called Nilo, and tell us about it. It's vibe coding for kids.
It does have vibe coding, but it's actually a 3D sandbox first, and it's social, and it has AI integrated in it. And like Tyler was saying, AI is not the main thing, but it's one of the things. And so Nilo has procedural tools where you can create walls and grass, just like games like Tiny Glade, Fable Down, and Townscaper have shown that players really enjoy creating with their own hands. And then you have the generative part of Nilo where you can just say, I would like a car. And then the car appears. I would like the car to move. And then it does. So that's where the vibe coding appears. So AI creates the characters, the assets, the animations, the rigging, and then players can then go and speak or type things into motion. And now you have a whole world of Lego building blocks where you can just create socially together.
Awesome. Oscar, we have the clip of Nilo as well. Let's show that so everyone can see what we're talking about.
I want to be a pro in a spacesuit. Yes! 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 Generate code. Whoa, impressive. All right, cool.
There's so many of them. I can't get rid of them.
Someone just asked me, do you want to play this? I'll just say yes.
Gabriel, come check this out!
It can reach unlimited potential.
It's amazing.
It can make literally anything.
What have you done, Ezra?
So Nuno, as I look at this, I'm imagining a lot of the kids who today would go into Roblox and they play there, and some kids can build stuff in Roblox, but it seems like you're really opening up the accessibility of these kind of sandboxy creative environments. That's what I see. I don't know if that is in fact what you're going for. I mean, am I onto something though?
So it's the initial target audience is exactly kids, 10 to 14-year-olds, because they're 3D native. They've been playing exactly games like Roblox and Minecraft for many years. But the distinction here is that normally kids are playing Roblox. They're not playing Roblox Studio. So when they want to create, they start to use like Roblox Studio, Unreal Engine, Unity, like Blender. And what is this? Are we back in the Photoshop era? Like, this is hard. They've been playing games. They haven't been playing like these complicated tools. And so the idea is that actually if you mix playing and creation and you give them an environment that they're already familiar with, because remember, these are kids' social networks. They get out of school and go like, I'll see you in Roblox later. So they're already very familiar. So So Nilo feels like a familiar environment to them where creation just comes out of play. And I haven't mentioned it, but Nilo just runs in the browser. So you just share a link and everyone just plays from their phone, from inside Discord activities, from desktop, and everyone is connected together.
I'm struck by the contrast and the similarities between these two products, because both are like incredibly open imagination engines, right? But you have exactly the opposite problem in one case. I think Tyler's situation is he's trying to get the AI to not just run off, and like the story you told, Tyler, was I really resonated with me. I did the same thing early on. Like the AI constantly wants to just go with whatever it says, yes and everything, and you lose the game, right? And teaching it to play a game, whereas you have the opposite thing. You have the ability to create an open world, and then how do you bring structure to the world so that it turns into a game, right? It's literally you're heading in two different directions with the same sort of point of magic. I don't know. It's super. Maybe I'm not making a coherent point, but I think it's
That's exactly right.
It's an extreme contrast and very exciting.
And Nuno, it looks really cool. Congratulations on the progress there. It looks amazing.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it. And I just wanted to mention on Paul's point, actually, it's a very interesting thing with Nilo. Actually, it's the players that create the constraints themselves. Right. Because they can say things like, hey, I would like this plane to fly, or I would like this, when something touches this coin, then increase the score by 1, right? And so you're starting to create the constraints and the gameplay by yourself.
When I build that magic airplane you described, can I give it to you and you keep it and it keeps the rules? Like, can I build up a toolbox over time, basically?
You can build things. You're in the world together. So after you build a plane, the other person sees it instantly, and you can start doing things with it, and you can make them move. And the editor is collaborative, so you can both speak to it, and the changes will remember. Like if you say, I want something to fly, you can then say faster, and it will know exactly what you mean. So you can start to add rules to the game.
Yeah, interesting. As we talked about this actually a little just a couple of days ago, we had Tejas, who's the CEO of Common Sense Machines. They're a platform they're a 3D foundation model. And we talked about like real 3D and 3D worlds and the advantages of that over a lot of the other things people have been talking about in 3D and video generation, like Gaussian splats and all these other systems, which create all these really interesting looking results. But until you actually have things like models and a real 3D world, you can't really introduce the physics or the persistence around objects. So that's one of the things you get out of this kind of environment, where you can kind of share the sandbox with your friends. I'm curious, like from a tech standpoint, both Nuno and Tyler, what are the enabling AI technologies that you're using in your products, if that's something you're able to talk about?
Do you want to go first, Nuno?
Sure. Yeah, so for enabling technologies, we have now, of course, generative AI that comes with you being able to generate assets from prompts and images. So you can just, from your phone, take a picture of a friend, upload it into Nilo, and you will see your friend in 15 seconds in 3D. And then, of course, you have AI is able to rig models now. So basically give control points so you can move limbs. In 30 seconds, you'll be able to control that friend that you just put into the world. And AI can also create animations from text, so text to motion. So then you can say, I want my friend to dance kizomba, and then it just goes like super funny motion. And so those are the enabling technologies that then we package into a nice product. I've been building game engines for 20 years, so I can add physics and graphics and make it fun. And AI now becomes an integrative element.
Are there specific APIs or vendors of any of these models that you like to use that you think are better than the alternatives out there? Where a lot of our audience is game developers, so I think they're super curious about best practices and solving some of the problems that you've already solved to the extent that you aren't spilling your secret sauce by sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Better actually depends on context. So I can tell you that, for example, just for 3D model generation, you have a few models that are now competing for state of the art. So you have, for example, Tripo and Meshi that Nilo built partnerships with, but you also have Trellis and Rodin that you can use from platforms like Fall.ai. So if you were to say which one is the fastest, it's probably Triple 1.4 that generates models in 15 seconds. If you were to say which one gives you the more control, it's probably Rodin. If you were to say which one is the highest quality, you'd probably say Trellis. And so you're like, which one allows you to rig and animate more freely, you would probably say Meshy. And so depending on what you're trying to do, you're now starting to go like, oh, I better use this model for this task and this model for this other task, and you can interchange, which is basically what Nilo does. Same thing for code generation. You can use different models for different tasks for different code generation. And so it's just about knowing which context am I, which model should I use.
Well, then where does a person who's maybe watching this show that might be early in this journey start on that journey? Because you're right, you know, that's a lot of possibility space. How do I get started?
I think they should just go around and play with the tools that are available and very accessible on the web. For example, the products that I just mentioned, Tripo and Meshy, you can just play around, create a model, rig it, animate it, and you can start to get a feel for what you can do. Same thing with, for example, Flora, Fauna is a tool that just came out from A16Z batch demo day that I participated in. And it's a canvas where you can just prompt image generate, video generate, and you can put things together. So it's a very easy way for you to start thinking about what is possible today.
Mm-hmm. Mode Appeal was asking this question about AI IDEs, and I also want to give Tyler a chance to answer the same question about like the tech stack and enabling technologies and whatnot. Maybe incorporate any of this into your answers. I mean, I think if you're truly just beginning, you haven't really done coding before, something like Cursor on Claude that's about as good as it gets right now, because it's a very iterative approach and it'll build the code with you kind of cooperatively. So that's one worth a try. I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts on others that would be comparable or even easier than that.
I mean,
I would say that Bolt and Lovable, if you have it coded, are actually.
I use Cursor.
Oh. There we go. 2 votes for Cursor. 2.5 votes. I think, Paul, you were saying you like Cursor too.
Yeah, I'm a Cursor guy too. So yeah. Nice.
All right, 3 votes. Actually, it'll be 4 because I nominated it. So Cursor's winning right now. Cursor wins the meta, and give it a try. I think you'll have fun. I know people that are actually building little applications using it and having really impressive results, especially from a prototyping standpoint. So Tyler, let's just go back to you though on the question of like tech stack and enabling. Like, what are you using in the product?
Yeah, I'm going to do a little anecdote on them for Montepelli, and then I'll answer the question. I have a friend who's adopted Cursor for their producers to be able to like do prototypes of like the fully playable production ready, not production ready, excuse me, like demoable prototypes to be able to like share with friends and figure out how to determine if this is the product to go with. So it's really interesting. Highly recommend that. So I wanted to go second because we're very different. We are actually trying to use less AI than we potentially could for a few different reasons. So right now we're using large language models, specifically Claude Sonnet 3.5. 3.7 doesn't seem to be as strong as 3.5, interestingly enough, for exactly what we're doing. And it might just be that we've tuned our prompts for 3.5. Yeah, so there's a very interesting landscape right now with AI, right? A lot of creators are seeing opportunities taken away from them or jobs threatened, or even if they don't see that that's actually happening, they see that there's a lot of stigma in the social media space about that as a thing. People are like, oh, there goes the VFX industry. And like as a VFX artist, and I'm not one, but like if I were a VFX artist, I'd be like, no, this looks garbage. I'd clearly have a much stronger advantage over AI than some of this stuff. And so they feel a little defensive or possibly threatened. And I have good friends, through my time in games that are amazing artists, have amazing talent. And it sucks to like see people prompt and say, in the style of, my friend's name, give me this art, and they feel like it's that, right? So, I mean, it is. These models have been prompted on their work without any compensation or permission. So that said, I'm not trying to make this political, but what we're doing as a studio is, because our audience, what's the very first thing, Paul, you do in an RPG? Have you played D&D or Baldur's Gate?
You mean this week yet?
Right.
Love
So
that question.
the very first thing you do before you start your session is that you create a character, right?
Yeah, of course.
These players are creators by default. Like,
right.
you want to go on and create worlds and adventures. So we are using AI in the places that unlock completely new capabilities and unlock creator potential. For us, what this looks like is a game developer designer creates an adventure. They create they partner with an artist to have the various different locations for that adventure. But then, instead of an audience of 4 to 6 players, right, which is what you have at the D&D table, you have an audience of 100,000. The AI acts as a scaling factor or a distribution, so that AI plus, again, the procedural generation, other content that we've created, allows us to have good pacing, have good game design, and have good improv at the table that brings in sort of the essence of what that designer, that author created. And at the very beginning of that adventure, it's going to be, this is the adventure authored by so-and-so, voice acted by this voice actor, attribution. And then if we do it right, we are, they get payment, through every line of dialogue that's been generated. They get kickback for. So this is what we're doing. We have to build. We have a big job in front of us to build trust with our community, and to turn around the conversation around AI, that AI can be used as a place for new opportunities. We fully anticipate being able to have amazing new platform for writers to connect with audiences in a way that audiences love, that they feel good about, they can be interactive in. And we're seeing a huge deficit of job opportunities in the animation and film and animation industries. And I think there's going to be a lot of talented writers who are looking for new marketplaces to envision their worlds. I'll mention as well, you just get much higher quality results when you have sort of that combination of the AI with the creator. It's been a good learning experience for this last year.
Now, Tyler and Nuno, I have another question that's sort of adjacent to the topic you were just raising, Tyler, which is, okay, both of you have chosen to use AI at the core, or at least a very, very important part of each of your products. It's not really about taking AI and then shipping the same game but faster with a smaller team. AI is in the loop of your game experience. That said, both of you come from AAA gaming and building big games. So I'm curious, and I'm going to give a quick station identification while you think about your answer to this, but I'd love to hear both of your takes. Nuno, we'll give you a chance to go first this time around, but how do you think AAA, the big games that we already have out there, is that going to be impacted by AI? I mean, clearly maybe on the prototyping side, but beyond that, really using to accelerate production pipelines and content creation and the type of games. Super curious about your perspective, even though that's not what you're doing in your games. So, but this is the point in halfway through the show that I just want to remind everybody who's watching right now. We've got nearly 500 people watching. This is probably bigger than just about any talk at GDC. So if you were just a GDC and you're a game developer, here's your chance to walk up to the mic and literally ask a question of 2 people that are leaders in this space using AI, not just to make they're the same games faster, but actually bring it in and craft a new kind of experience that you wouldn't be able to have without AI supporting it. So really do want to urge you to use this time that you are watching live to come and ask those questions. We do this once a week. We do it as a live program just so you can do that. If you're watching this in replay, love you too. Glad you took the time to watch this. Most of you are probably watching it in replay, but use this as a reminder to set that clock. And every 1 p.m. Eastern time on Thursdays, this is when we have the game development live stream. And you're welcome to join in. You're even welcome to come in live on camera if you want, by the way. Oscar, if you shoot him a message, like he'll bring you in. We'll make it happen. That's how dynamic we are as a show here. All right, Nuno, so let's pick up with that question that I was just asking a moment ago. So AAA, are we going to see an impact using these technologies for AI and generative stuff? Like, I guess we should time bound it. In the next few years, is AAA going to change?
It's already changing. It's
Okay.
just that you only see it in the background. You don't see it in the games themselves. And
Okay.
so you already have, it's slow because big companies move slower, but you already have a lot of types of production being used in AI. So for example, for story and for storytelling, story creation, story defining, AI is already used for that. For helping to create concept art, some studios are already adapting also for sound production, for ideation. So I'm now narrowing down because like for story, some studios are using it a lot. For concept art, fewer ones. For sounds, fewer ones. For 3D model generation, fewer ones. But you're going to start to see a ramp up. And I think studios that are younger or that have lower production quality bars are already adopting AI at a much faster rate, and even internally in their processes, so that they could create levels at a much faster rate than it was possible before. But you asked specifically for AAA, and I think the answer is it's already been happening across different departments, and the adoption is going to increase, I would imagine, but much slower than if you were to say go towards UGC, right? You already see Roblox Studio integrating a bunch of AI for concept art, for helping with coding, for material generation. And so you're going to see a whole generation of UGC creators using AI to create their games. And this is the same thing that I'm doing with Nilo as well.
Do you think it's changing team composition or team size for AAA game efforts?
I think that's a slower thing, but I think, yes, I think you'll be able, so not just affect the team size, but also what the teams themselves do. Because instead of you having to create a concept art from scratch and then to take it to a lead and go like, yes, this is what we want to do, you just start to generate a few images and you go like, this is the style. So now I want to refine it. And so instead of needing like 2-3 people to do similar things in a pipeline, maybe you have the process go faster. And now you're doing a slightly different thing. Now you're editing, now you're curating, now you're refining instead of creating from scratch. This is just an example on one department, but you can see how it scales.
Okay, I have so many follow-up questions, but Tyler, go. What is your thought on the AAA development?
Yeah, process? I think team size in some places, team sizes dropped faster than was ready for, and they had to sort of recoup that. I think in some places, AAA hasn't touched AI yet because they're nervous about the copyright or about what the implications are. Slower to adopt, there's higher risk. They want to see other folks do it first before they integrate. I think, though, what I'm hearing from some game studios is that they are trying to make an effort, the AAA studios, they're trying to make an effort to integrate more to speed up production, not reduce team size. Even though there has been a lot of reduction, but I don't think it's due to the AI so much as it is to sort of the economic factors around, current state of the industry. And so I think AI is going to become a permanent part of AAA development. And I'd like to address Ryan McKean's question.
Go for it.
I think it's shortening the gap, closing the gap between AAA and I do want to call out, though, that what we've seen is that there's a lot of AAA high level production startups that have been trying to get footing over these last few years and have been failing to the indie group. So if you wanted to go indie, like high production AAA art and budgets and things aren't necessary. We're seeing that players resonate with innovation, good game design, interesting, new, fresh ideas, and AAA is slower on those. And so I would almost say like indie is a great place to be regardless of AI, though AI will also help speed you up.
Paul, was that resonating? I saw you nodding a lot.
Oh yeah, deeply. It deeply resonates. I mean, let's face it, AAA gaming has not historically been very strong on delivering on time and on budget, right? Like that's not one of our, as an industry. I have a friend who is in the film industry, and he constantly points out how we feel like we're an old industry, but we're really young, and we have very inconsistent processes. And yeah, I think at least all the people I talk to, I can't speak about my own employer, but like I can speak about other people's, and I can tell you that like what everybody wants is consistency of process, right? And so any ground you gain using AI, early stage AI in your creative process is usually going toward not replacing people, but getting their processes to deliver a prototype earlier so that the right people can see it, and you can build internal. When you got a massive organization, getting everybody to agree on what to do costs more than actually building the damn thing, right? And so yeah, getting that buy-in early is magical when you can rapid prototype, right? So I mean, I couldn't agree with Tyler more. Like, I think it's I mean, it is going to affect things. I don't think it's genuine to say it's not going to affect things. I think actually a bigger impact is what's happening with the consumer changes, right? I mean, we're now feeding a group of people that grew up on Roblox and Minecraft, and the aesthetic has changes. Like I think a decade ago, if you had shown people Nuno's product, they would have thought it was like, what's going on here, right? And now I look at that product and I go, holy shit, that's awesome. Because I think we've fundamentally got a different eye for what actually is required out of the presentation of a game and what's actually fun about a game. It's a new world, right? And that world is not necessarily all big budget, massive. I need massive spins on assets, right?
I grow up with like always looking at like what's the coolest graphics, through the 90s. You're like, what's the game with the coolest graphics? That's going to be the funnest game. Yeah. And then Roblox came along, and it's like, I mean, not Roblox, Minecraft came along, and you're like, big fat 3D pixels is the like most fun experience I've had this decade. So it's low fidelity. Like high fidelity is no longer as strong a selling point for a lot of gamers.
It feels like kids that are growing up with games today, they're just more imaginative than some of the previous generation of gamers, because my son, who's 13, isn't highly persuaded by the graphics. Like, he loves Elden Ring, for example, where the graphics are amazing, but he's perfectly fine. Like, he spends way more time in Minecraft, and he also goes into Roblox and does all kinds of things there. So, and Roblox is widely varying in the graphic fidelity of the experience. He doesn't really seem to care. He puts those all together. It's like his imagination is filling it in.
I'd go one farther. I'd say that the typical teen consumer to young adult consumer is even cynical on the point of presentation for the sake. I mean, they're smart, right? And they have a strong sense of whether something like Elden Ring is just legitimately good graphics with good gameplay, or whether somebody's just trying to sell them a pretty picture, right? And I don't think they need the fake pretty picture to get excited about games, right?
Yeah, we're WanderHeart's actually in a raise right now. We're trying to raise money, and it's interesting. We pitched this in front of investors at times, and there's this question mark. Well, where's the graphics? Like, it's not 3D. And like, well, if we realized it in full 3D, then we're artificially like constraining what you can do in the game by having a story told. You can do anything. You can go anywhere. And so we're seeing that like players are like, actually don't do graphics, because if you did graphics, then like I feel like I'd be looking at that instead of looking at my friends and like getting into the story. And so we're having to figure out like what's the right fidelity. And honestly having to sort of educate folks on the lack of the need for that. Dungeons and Dragons has been making a huge comeback over the last 10 years. Like it's thriving despite huge barriers to entry, 40 hours of prep to even start a game, 4-hour sessions that you have to like coordinate with like 4 to 6 other people, and yet it thrives without graphics. And so there's really compelling evidence that you don't need those AAA budgets.
You don't need the graphics, but what I think you're benefiting from is, Dungeons and Dragons is going through a golden age, right? And we've all watched Mercer run his games, and I think most people that are actively playing Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games, like if we just want to say fidelity and don't just mean graphic pictures, like the fidelity of the average D&D game has gone up by an order of magnitude. My expectations for what I expect out of my dungeon master is a hell. I don't envy people today, right? And I think your product appeals deeply to me because both as a creator and as a player, because I don't have time to generate a game to the standard of the fidelity standard that people are expecting, right? Not about the pretty pictures, but there is a game fidelity, right? That I'm hungry for. I can't run a game like Mercer, but maybe with a game like yours, I can have that kind of experience, right?
And you can still have that social improv, storytelling, theater of the mind, imagination type experience where you get to be a character, like the hero in your own story. And it's been unfortunate that it's like been so hard to get into, and it's kind of been like delegated to the domain of like the super nerds who are willing to put in all the time. It's become cooler, but still takes all that time. And as soon as we eliminate that time, we're seeing folks who would never touch D&D or haven't even been interested in fantasy role playing, loving this, like the magic, the light bulb goes on, and they're like, oh, this is amazing. And I think as Nilo is probably a similar thing of like, I just created something and it just happened, and I am now totally bought into this experience.
Nuno, what do you think? Are kids today, are they just built different in this era of along with like skibbity and sigma and all these other words that my kids are saying all the time, which I think I have the barest concept of what those words mean, but are they also different video game players?
Yeah, I think it's a different generation, right? I grew up on like Final Fantasy VII, and the arms were like triangles, and of course that was the most amazing thing to me, and I imagined a lot of what was happening. And I think a similar thing is happening here, where you're playing Minecraft and Roblox. The graphical fidelity is not to the top of what Unreal Engine 5 can produce, but it doesn't matter because the imagination and the gameplay is there to provide an experience that is even better than what any other title could produce. And so they just keep coming back to what's actually a lot of fun.
Which is interesting because it almost suggests that is also somewhat of the opening for generative AI technologies as well. So if we're not quite at the point where you can't just go speak a world into existence and it's like Elden Ring, which I think is eventually going to happen, by the way, but like we're not quite there for maybe a while yet. The Elden Ring is not going to spring into life on your screen because you prompt it into existence. That said, people are happy to participate in worlds where the graphic fidelity is at the level of a Minecraft or a Roblox or any number of things. And that gives us sort of this new approach to creativity in what we present too. Like it's more of the social mechanics and what you get to do as opposed to how it looks.
I think that it's also important to remember that nostalgia, in my experience, it works in like 30-year cycles. So if we're looking back 30 years ago, we're thinking about PS1. So we as kids kind of grew up with like around that era where it was triangles, it was, Final Fantasy VII, and it lives in your memory as a whole different experience. So I don't see adults really rejecting like the low poly style anymore. It's the same way that like pixel art became such a beloved thing. It's the low poly thing has fallen into that slot as well.
There's a whole school of media theory on this. There's even like the idea that whatever music you were listening to when you graduated high school is going to be at the anchor of your taste. You may not self-identify as that, but that's going to be at the anchor of your taste for like the rest of your life. And it's probably true of video games too. Like that's the foundation you're building your experience library on. And the games are changing.
So I have a pragmatic question about AI when it's in the loop. So we know that if you're developing a game in advance, the cost of using all of these tools is just sort of baked into development. It's a fixed cost by the time you ship. But with a game where AI is part of the experience, it's sort of like operating an MMO in the sense that every time someone comes and plays, you're costing the game studio or the game publisher money, right? Except generative AI is also more expensive than a typical user just bouncing off of a server, right? So I'm just curious how you're thinking about that, and how does the actual real cost of making API calls back to, Claude Sonnet, for example, or generative art systems, like how does that factor into the way you think of these games as businesses? Tyler, you want to take a first stab at that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we were worried. We were really worried about costs for a long time early on, and kept getting distracted, like optimizing early, or trying to figure out how to make this work. We found a couple of things that we were like, okay, this, there's some caching we can do. There's some cost optimizations we can do. Let's just put it to the side and focus on the quality and the experience. And if once we nail that, then we can go further into the optimization. What we've seen in the reality is that the costs of these AI models have just continued to drop. It's becoming more and more affordable. And there are techniques and strategies to be able to, like, even in the current ecosystem, really keep those costs low, or at least manageable. Unfortunately, there will be a period in which some of those costs are kind of being forwarded on to the players. And there's the hope that the experience, and not that the hope, but like the reality is that the experience has to be novel and interesting and unique enough that you can't get it anywhere else. So I'm willing to pay a little bit more to have this, and potentially on an ongoing basis. I know there's a lot of players who want to go back to the premium, like I buy my title once, I own it forever. Unfortunately, we can't do that in the AI space, at least not to the same level. So that said, the models are continuing to improve. We're seeing a lot of innovation in the space, and there's, the hardware is also improving. So there's a reality that I see coming in the next few years where some of these models are moving out to our devices where we can play locally. Yeah, and then suddenly those costs are now shifted back to, you don't have those costs anymore, and you can have those single player AI games, or those, I said single player, but I mean the premium, the one-time purchase, or the low costs on the server side.
Right. So then instead of the studio is essentially renting GPUs in the cloud to do your AI inference on, we'll just basically push it back to the GPU running on the user's device. And I've noticed that players never think about their electric bill when they turn their PlayStation on, for example. Like, that doesn't factor into the cost of operating the game. So I suspect people will keep paying for the recharge on their cell phones and pay for their devices, even if the GPU consumes a lot of energy.
And it's very different when the player is like the CPU is running and GPUs are running on each player. They're only like seeing the cost for themselves, right? Which is nothing. But you multiply that against 10,000, 100,000, million players, and bring those costs all into one person who has to fit that bill, and suddenly it's unmanageable. So it's a very different economics.
Now, Nuno, your platform, I don't know if you call it a game or a platform. You should tell me. But in Nilo, you're doing graphics generation like that. That is fairly intensive inference. I'm curious your thoughts on the cost structure, how it factors into the way you operate the game, and also this idea of like shifting the inference away from the cloud into on device. Is that something that you also see happening in the future?
Yeah, so for Nilo, we've built the graphics engine, and so we're not actually generating frames on the fly, but we are generating 3D models on the fly.
Mhm.
And yes, those are more expensive than just making a call to a code generator like Claude or ChatGPT. And so what Nilo actually does is we've added a smart caching layer to the model. So if someone asks for a cat, then if it's the first time, you will get that cat. But if anyone else asks for another cat, they will get it almost immediately with no cost to AI. And we're creating a 3D library that we can use for training afterwards. So there's a lot of benefits to that. And we can do this with rigging, we can do this for animations. And so what we'll be able to do is to provide an experience where actually Nilo will be subsidizing an almost freemium version with a massive library of 3D models where you can just play around with a bunch of characters that have already been created. And then if you want to generate an animation or a character that has not been created yet, that will count towards your premium experience, where then you will have to pay something for, which, like Tyler said, hey, hopefully, not hopefully, but like this is something that you would never be able to get anywhere else. And so you would actually be able to pay for.
That also raises a really interesting related question, which is just sort of quality of experience when you have the unpredictability of AI. So I thought that would be a good place to explore. What the reason it reminded me of that, Nuno, is when you talked about caching and storing the models of the cat, for example. I don't know, a cat is probably one that's already in the system. But if you ask for, I don't know, some
Please
other
uncache the broken platypus. I would like to make a better platypus.
Yeah, the platypus. Yeah, I'm sure platypus has been asked. I can't even think of an animal that hasn't been asked for already, even in an alpha test. But someday someone's going to ask you for one.
Oh,
it gives you the chance.
Kids figured out, like, oh, give me a turtle with 6 legs, no, 7 legs, and it's pink with rainbow stripe. Like, even in our game, which is not visual, the kids were having like so much fun. Like, yeah, he was casting magic spells, right? And he's like, next time I'm gonna create a turtle companion character who's got like 8 legs, no, 13. I'm like, this is fun for you to like figure out what the number of legs this turtle's gonna have. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, kids will imagine it.
I'm wondering if in something like this caching layer you're thinking of, Nuno, is that also an opportunity for like your team to review things and decide, okay, this was a model that looked pretty good, we need to tweak it before it gets preserved for future utilizations? And also, how do you think about just when it is novel creation, how do you make sure that it's good, and for you're a kids game, so like you probably have some concerns about appropriateness of content too. Those seem like hard problems to solve, even with sort of the protective mechanisms that are already built into LLMs these days.
Yeah, of course, this is a product question. You could have many avenues that you could explore to tackle this. So for example, you could build into the product experience itself a rating mechanism where you say, I like the quality of this, I don't like the quality of that, instead of us being the arbiters and judges of what quality actually means. Of course, you can also bake into the product an experience where you say, oh, I got this cat, I don't like it, generate me a new one, or generate me a higher quality one. Yeah. And then, you start to have a lot of different options, right? As for appropriateness, yes, that's very important, especially for my target audience. And so some of the things that we've been thinking about and already partnering with, even though we haven't launched, is, for example, using Secure 3D, which enables you to use AI to verify that the model is actually appropriate, any kind of 3D model, so that you can then get a response, is this appropriate or not? Similar systems like KID, which approve parental controls. So we're going to integrate with systems that use AI like this, but also we're going to have a staging environment where trusted community members will see the worlds that are built before they actually get published into the public. So an approach that combines human verification with AI verification. And of course, we're going to iterate from there on what good actually looks like.
When you say AI verification, is that basically a second agent or API that takes it basically gets shown the object and says, is this naughty?
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah.
How do you think about that, Tyler? Because you're like, it's freeform storytelling. So Like
Yeah.
I feel like I've become an expert on how to jailbreak every LLM that's ever existed and get it to do stuff that
We'll have to play.
they didn't
We'll have to
want.
see what you can do with ours. This is a great great discussion point. It's something that we honestly like. It feels better when the game master pushes back, when the game master sets boundaries.
Yes.
So for us, it's a feature, not just like a protection. And the way we're thinking about it, this isn't implemented yet in our tech, but in D&D, you often have like session 0 where you set sort of what is the group's comfort level with different things. I forget what you call that, but it's like you set sort of your
boundaries.
house rules, boundaries. Yeah. So we would do a similar thing where as part of the process, like players who are submitting, what things they want to do or chatting, that the first time there's even silliness, or the first like over silliness, like there's D&D can always get silly to an extent, but like if you're just like goofing off completely and trying to troll the GM and stuff, then there will be a moment in which the game master asks like, hey, you know what, this is your game. If everyone wants to play this way, cool. We'll go ahead and allow the silliness or this level of content or whatever. But I want to make sure everyone's got a buy-in, and so everyone has to click yes, and then like, yeah, let's go for it, or say, yeah, cool. And we can couch that. We can say like the game is really fun when you take it seriously, but if you want to be silly, it can be a fun in a different way. And then of course, similarly for content as well, we can there. And honestly, we're not trying to be a high R-rated experience. There's other places that you can go for some of that. We want to be more on the family-friendly side. So we're actually just locking some of that down anyway. You do have to have violence in a D&D game because you're always killing stuff, but there's certain barriers that we're not going to cross, and we're just going to say no on certain things. And because of the way that we are doing the implementation and the prompting of the AIs and even the AIs that we use, we have a high level of confidence that we'll be able to catch that stuff, and we test it as well. Every once in a while, we push those boundaries, just make sure we're still within range. Well, we haven't tried throwing John at it, so we'll see.
I'll give it a try. We'll see. Steph, you post a comment here that they are working on an AI-assisted prompt to world generation. So sounds like the holodeck. So I'm gonna ask a lightning round question here. So, how close are we to the holodeck? How many years? Nuno, you're building a holodeck. How about one that's like in Star Trek? Not the physics simulation where I have force feedback in the environment. I'm not sure that's physically possible, but everything other than that.
So I've already seen some environments where actually starts to get close to something where you actually feel like you are in an holodeck, and of course it's a simulation. Now the real thing, oh man, that's a hard one. I have no idea. But in the world of AI, everything I predict, it's always coming faster than I think. So let me say it might be a few years from now.
Faster than we think is your answer.
Faster than we think, exactly.
Tyler, what do you think?
I'm hearing a lot of people say a few years from now. I think it'll be slower than we think because of how long, not necessarily how long the technology adopts, but how long the society adopts. Or rather, not how fast the technology moves, but the society adoption of that. Like how seeing it actually be codified into a simulation that real folks can throw a VR headset on it and get into. For us, what we're excited about is we see a lot of folks in that space trying to generate worlds. Generative video is like, oh, there's some pretty cool stuff happening here. I don't know where the ethics are on that, but like the advancements on the tech is looking really good. And so what we want to do is we want to be ready to like capitalize with like the storytelling aspect and the interactive aspect to that. Like it doesn't feel like there's near as much happening there. We don't see strong storytelling, strong like narrative building that's dynamic and interactive, and or even not dynamic and interactive. But in order to make it dynamic and interactive, you have to be able to pull together the right systems and things. And so, yeah, that's what I'm excited about, is like when that day happens, we're going to be there, the natural fit for like actually giving you the immersive entertainment experience where you get to be your character and like it works and it's quality. And there's like, I don't know how many of you are story buffs, but like you get the character arcs and the like, you know, the arc of the story that grows to a climax, and you have like these amazing growing and changing experiences. I'd love to see people cry through the experiences that we can make interactive. I think it still comes from human creators, but being able to make that interactive is such a powerful idea.
Awesome. Well, we've done it again. We've burned through another hour, but one that I think was really well spent. I think there was a ton of ideas in here and a lot of pragmatic information. Like if you're building a project, we talked about tech, we talked about cost structures, a lot of things for you to actually think of in your own games. And we'll try to post back to the threads on these, some of the information like tech platforms and stuff that were used, just so you can go back and see that. So I want to thank everyone for participating. Just in the closing moments here, Nuno with Nilo and Tyler with WanderHeart. I would love each of you just to tell people where to go, learn more, check out the companies that you are building here and the products that you're creating. So Nuno, quick pitch, where should they go? What should they check out?
Nilo.io, nilo.io. Just sign for the early access and our Discord and come check it out. It's fun.
Great. And Tyler, where can they go to learn more?
We're still really early, so we don't have a fancy website yet. I mean, it's a basic website, but not a good sign up. Happy to connect on LinkedIn, xTyler, or on Twitter, xTyler, xTyler everywhere, XTYLER.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tyler and Nuno, for taking part in this. This was an awesome conversation, real eye opener, and also just very inspiring to see the real games and the real products starting to be built on top of this technology. And I want to thank everybody who tuned in today. We're closing with 616 live viewers. Thanks everybody who watched today. And if you're in replay today, please show up for next time. Show up live, ask questions like you saw a bunch of people do. But until that time, be well, keep building games, keep playing games, and have fun. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.